Hello everyone, welcome back to another game of the day recap. And this is the second day. It's not really the second match. I played Pakabera first, and then I played Isaiah, and then I played only one game of my match between me and Viri. But because of her busy schedule, I guess, I've only been able to finish another match today with Velite. So here I want to take a look at our third game, which is definitely not my best game. I don't think it's the most accurate one. For example, I think my other two games I didn't make any mistakes or any blunders at all, and I had like below 20 centipon loss or something like that. But this game is a bit more interesting. I think I made a few one blunder at least definitely, and a few inaccuracies. So like I've mentioned in my previous game of the day video, it's not interesting if there aren't any mistakes or blunders, right? Like if it's perfect chess, we'll be like, oh wow, it's so perfect, but it's not really that interesting at some point. So we'll take a look at this third game, and if you want to take a look at my other very hyper accurate games, feel free to check them out. I've already released the full video of my live playing through of those games. So without further ado, let's actually get into the game. Now in this third game, we actually repeat an opening that we have played in the first game, which is the Polish opening. So Velite starts with b4. I play e5. This is the most, I guess, grandmaster way of playing it. I want to just recapture back, and then I stick a pawn in the center. So bishop b2 going through with the plan, allowing me to capture. But white is basically saying, you know what, you're trading a center pawn for a side pawn, I'm okay with that. So I take the pawn, he takes the pawn, and now I try to gain as much development as possible. I play knight f6. So basically defending this g7 pawn. If the bishop ever takes at any point, like let's say if bishop takes, queen takes, you can see that there's no masters that have actually played this before, because the dark squares become very weak in this case. And if let's say we see something like c3, all I need to do is just retreat my bishop anywhere, and the knight has nowhere to go, right? So this is very bad for white. So instead, Velite plays e3 over here. Now in the first game, they played c3. In the first game, they played c3, after which I had a very comfortable position, because eventually they traded bishop for knight, and I was able to take advantage of the dark square weaknesses. But here instead, e3 was played, so I play knight to c6, trying to gain development with tempo, attacking the bishop. So bishop to c3, trying to either induce me to take and develop the knight for free, or to trade off my dark square bishop and make it harder for me to take advantage of the dark squares. But even during the game, I thought, you know what, if you really want to remove my dark square bishop along with your dark square bishop, then by all means go ahead. I still have in development. I'm going to be very happy with my position and take advantage of all the undeveloped pieces. So I simply castle over here. I'm prepared to play something like d5. I will see bishop b5 here, trying to remove the defender in order to take my bishop. So the threat here is to take my knight, and after I recapture back the bishop, to capture my bishop. I play knight d5 over here. You can see that it's marked as an inaccuracy, but my idea is that I don't really mind trading off pieces once again, because I think that if this knight is ever taken, I'm just going to accelerate my development even more. These pieces are still stuck in the back rank. My king is really castled. I'm going to get my bishops out, and I'm going to have a very nice game. So you see here, bishop takes c6 as planned. And here I actually make a very terrible blunder. As you can see here, it's marked in red. I played knight takes c3. The idea, of course, is that I want to play an in-between move. I don't want to capture this bishop right away and allow white to just remove all the bishops off the board, because I want to play aggressively. My idea is that if I take the bishop, sure, I'm attacking the rook, but they will probably just take away the knight, and then everything will be traded off. I didn't want that many pieces to be traded off, so I try to take the knight and then make do things there. But there's a very big problem with this move, which is the fact that white doesn't have to capture back the knight, allowing me to capture the bishop. Actually here, white can play pawn takes c3, and although the knight is very miserable, um, that means that white is going to be up a piece because my bishop is still under attack. This bishop is under attack, and if I try to recapture the d pawn, queens can get traded off, and I'm going to be in a very awful spot. Unfortunately for me, this wasn't spotted by Velity, and they played the more natural, normal-looking knight takes c3, maintaining the pawn islands, right? Maintaining the pawn structure, and this allowed me to capture with the b pawn, which although might be a bit inaccurate, is actually, I feel, a bit more of an easier way to, I guess, a more aggressive way to take advantage of the position and to try and punish my opponent who is lower rated than I am. So the idea here is that it's going to be easier for me to support d5 in the future if, let's say, d4 or e4 is played shortly in the future. And with my bishops having, my left side bishop having the opportunity to either, the flexibility, sorry, to go either fianchetto here or to develop normally this diagonal, gives me a lot of flexibility, and I'll be able to make use of the open files, very open board, I guess, because a lot of pieces are off the board. I will be able to use my bishop pair very effectively. So you see here, knight g to e2, just trying to find a way to develop. I decided to play d5 as planned, just gain more control and gain more space. See rook to b1, attacking my bishop. I just simply retreat it to a very shielded square. It's going to support c5 in the future if I do eventually play it. You see d4 over here. I think this isn't that great because it's going to, the knight doesn't really have anywhere to go, and it's going to make it even harder to break with e4 in the future. But I guess maybe white doesn't want to break yet because the king is still in the center and there are still a lot of holes. So this does make sense. It's trying to prevent me from playing c5 maybe. Although I can even just play c5 now. But instead I play bishop to g4, trying to immobilize this knight, develop my bishops, and try to get a fast attack on the king side in the event that white tries to castle. So h3 is played, trying to chase my bishop away. I just play bishop to f5. The reason for this move is that I just want to put on as much pressure as possible, and I want to simply make it as hard for white to castle as soon as possible. So I want to make white not have anywhere to place their king, and try to eventually play c5 when I'm ready and just go all and attack aggressively. So you see g4 here, white felt very compelled to chase my bishop away even further from this diagonal. Maybe these holes are making them feel a bit uncomfortable here. So I retreat to e6 instead of g6 because I don't want my bishop pair to be forcibly removed after something like knight to f4. That would force me to give up my bishop pair. So instead I retreat over to e6, and if knight to f4 is played, then only I'll retreat back even further, and I'll claim that I'm happy with this I guess placement of white's pieces, because I don't think they're very harmonized, and I'll be able to try and attack afterwards with something like queen to h4. So we see knight to a4 here. The idea is to prevent me from playing c5, which makes sense, but this does mean that the knight is going to be out of play for the remainder of quite a big portion of the game, I guess. So here I continue my plan, playing queen to h4, putting some pressure here. I'm trying to take the pawn because this pawn here is tied down to, is pinned, sorry, oh no. Oops. Yeah, so the pawn here is pinned to this rook over here because the king hasn't castled yet. King stays stuck in the center, and it's because of this reason that I think Velity played king to d2 to try and defend the rook over here and maybe claim that the king is safer in the center because the center is not open yet, and c5 is not that easy to achieve because just knight takes c5. But this also means that the f2 pawn is hanging, so I decided to take the f2 pawn. I decided that, you know what, if rook to f1, it doesn't really pose a threat to my queen. It did happen in the game, rook to f1 was played, so I just simply retreated back to the same square, and maintaining my trend of taking the pawn, maybe coming back here in the future before playing c5 to win the pawn, and those ideas are still present in my mind. See rook to f3 over here, trying to defend this pawn, and here I play rook a to b8. Now this is, the engine calls this an inaccuracy, but my idea here is that I'm up a pawn, I'm happy to trade, But that isn't my main reason of why I played rook to b1. Let me try and remember why I want to do that. Oh yeah, I noticed that the king was actually quite short on squares, and eventually at some point I want to play something like bishop to b4 to force the king to a very hard spot. For example, if let's say a nothing move, okay, then maybe if I check, I'll either force the knight back and I'll be able to play c5, or um, in the event of c3, no wait, if king here first, the king basically has no squares left, and and if I manage to check the white king, is basically checkmate. So now I have a lot of ideas to sacrifice or to just check the king and just win kind of deal, right? Because this square is sort of protected by my pawn. So that's one of the ideas. And if c3, what was I thinking? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I was thinking here. Basically, that was my idea, was to play bishop to b4 and try to restrict the squares from the white king. But here king d3 was voluntarily played instead, so I didn't even have to go through the trouble of bishop to b4. So I played this idea to try and take advantage of this king d3 move as much as possible, which is f5. Now f5 can seem like a bit unnecessarily dangerous because like why would you open up your king even more when that's the only counterplay that white can have, and then there's like tension here, there's tension here. Calculate this very carefully. The core idea of this is that I want to give a check and then give a check this way. So basically I want to use my bishop pair to try and force an exchange of try to win an exchange. For example, if pawn takes, bishop takes, the king can't really move. The king has to move because if it moves, then I'll be able to check my queen, and I think that's very dangerous. Okay, let's say this. Two squares to go to. I think I can check here. Then if maybe blocks, I can win the. I can either win. I can win the rook also. So maybe I don't even do that. I can win the rook. But yeah, that's my key idea, to give this very little check, and if king moves preemptively, I can still play this. And I think during the game, yeah, I saw that I could win the exchange. So that was my idea, to win the exchange. And here I was surprised kind of with the move knight to f4, because I didn't anticipate this move at all. And this move actually looks very dangerous because it attacks my bishop, and after it attacks my bishop, it's going to attack. If it takes my bishop, it's going to attack my rook. So it looks very dangerous. But after some careful calculation, from this position alone, I calculated all the variations, and I was pretty happy with my calculation here, which is why I decided to call this the game of the day, because I think I managed to be very precise in this critical position when I needed to be, and I very happily took with f takes g4. But before we see what happened in the game, let's take a look at some of the lines that I calculated. I'm not sure if I'm going to remember all of them because it has been some hours since, and I just finished doing not really finished, but I'm working through some assignments and my mind is a bit tired. But still, I think my calculation was I wanted to try and take if possible and try and continue my plan. So if white does waste time like doing nothing, then I would be, let's say, just queen here, then I'm going to be very happy with checking with this bishop over here, and then I'll be able to continue through with all my plans. I'm going to be able to take the rook, I'm going to be able to win an exchange at least at the end afterwards. So very many happy things. So there is some urgency in the position. White cannot just hang back and do nothing. And the most obvious move here would be to actually take the bishop, and because it comes with an attack on my rook, and this looks very, very dangerous. But I saw that after pawn takes, so I currently up an exchange, it actually opens up my queen's vision of the e4 square, which will be able to check the king and either pick up the knight, or maybe try and get some mate somewhere if white plays inaccurately. Another thing I had to be careful of was also in variations where the rook was taken first. I think I saw rook takes, and if bishop takes again here, and now this is of course even worse for white, because now again I have this threat of queen to e4 check, but the knight is no longer attacking my rook, so there is no, white essentially lost a tempo. And I think I also saw that after takes, check here, after the king moves, if here, then I just win. I just win after something like that. Wait. Maybe my calculation is as good as I thought it was. I saw that white had to take here, and then afterwards I had check, queen blocks, queen check, and then the king has to either move, and then I win the rook, or if queen blocks, then I take the queen and I win the rook at the end. And then with attack on the knight, then after the knight moves somewhere, he cannot attack my rook, then I'll be able to take this knight. So I'll be up the exchange. And here, and I thought that if king to d2, I thought I still had bishop to b4, but after, oh yeah, was it this? After c3, oh, I think I miscalculated. I thought that I could win the exchange because of this. But now that I'm looking at it on the board, knight takes will defend the b1 square. So actually I won't be able to win the exchange that way. Huh. And now my bishop is the one that's pinned. Huh. But I think I'm still winning here because of my pass pawn. I can just ditch my bishop and then push my pass pawn to victory. But yeah, I guess I miscalculated this part. But this was the critical line that I anticipated. The line that I thought would happen was after here, f takes, pawn takes, knight takes, and check, king, bishop check, and then I thought that white had to capture here, then I would be able to win some more material. And if c3, I thought that it was enough to just take and win the exchange there, but I guess I'm just wrong. But since I have lichess here, let's take a look at the evaluation maybe of this. Yeah, I have to. I still have the pass pawn, so it's still fine. Oh, bishop f4 instead. If bishop f4, if takes, what's the idea here? Queen takes d4. Okay, this is all taken. Force the king back. Oh, check. Yeah, okay, yeah. I didn't see bishop f4. Yeah, that would be a very killer blow. Okay. Yeah. So I guess I miscalculated that part, but fortunately I was already ahead enough at this point in the game that even if it did go to that point, I'll be able to stop and recalculate, because after when the position got closer to after a few moves, I saw that c3 wasn't as easy of a problem, wasn't as small as a problem as I thought it was initially. So actually in the actual game, what happened after knight f4, I took f takes g4. I was very happy with myself for finding that move. Knight takes e6 as expected, g takes f3, and here I was very surprised. Not really very surprised, it was one of the variations, but I didn't expect white to voluntarily give up the exchange so simply without playing the most critical line by playing rook takes b8, queen to e4 check first, king to d2, rook takes b8, and now I'm threatening the knight as well as some bishop stuff. So queen to g1 here was played, I guess, out of desperation because white is already down a lot of material. So maybe a last ditch effort so that I don't see the mate. If I play something like bishop to b4 here, then there could have been c3 and I would have given up some advantage for no good reason. So I saw c3 at this position, and I decided to, you know what, I don't think I have anything better. I don't think I have any forced mates. So I'll just take the knight after knight to c3, which is just a retreating move, I guess. I played bishop b4 to pin the knight and remove it. I don't think it's very necessary to play that move. Because the knight is actually restricted by my other pawns, but I wanted to play something like queen to f5 or queen to f6 or maybe rook to f8, just get one of my heavy pieces to the f file and escort my pawn over to victory. But I was worried that, you know what, I don't need to waste time to calculate any knight moves or forks or anything like that, so I decided to just pin it first, and I'm going to take it regardless of whatever white does. And after a3, I very happily took the knight. The king is even further now, and there is no way for the king to stop the pawn. So I played queen to f5 here, attacking the pawn while also escorting this pawn to victory. And in this position, white simply resigned, and I managed to confirm and seal the deal in my match against Fellaity. I thought that over here in this position after rook takes b8, I thought that a more resistant way that that white could play was to play something like knight to c5, defend this knight, and then maybe try and close things down as much as possible. But of course, even this is insufficient because I'm already up the exchange and more. So I could simply just trade down pieces. Probably this was the reason why they didn't go into this line. And after knight takes, then I'm very cleanly up material. I can either play something like rook to b2 to put a lot of pressure onto this c2 pawn, or I can just simply get my pieces to f1 and push my f1. So yeah, it was a very satisfactory game from the calculating side. I was very happy with most of my calculation in the all three games actually. Awareness wasn't 100% there, but I felt that I played pretty precisely in the first two games, and in this game where I wanted to win aggressively and put a little less stock into objective accuracy, I was still able to create some complications and win through tactics alone. So very happy about that. Looking forward to finishing my match against Fury and playing my games against, I think, who else haven't I played? Oh, Cole and Homemade Pizza. So yep, that's all for today. See you guys in the next video. Yep, Johnny.